So today we're going to talk about delusions along the path, which I know quite a bit about delusions. The title doesn't talk about what to do about them, though. It just, So at least I thought we would start with, what are delusions? What does that mean? And then we'll work towards what we're going to do about it. When I was thinking about this, the image that came to my mind is the mirage. You're out in the desert, and you see out in the distance it looks like an oasis, and you're going towards it, and it appears to be there, and you get a little bit of a boost. Oh, okay, an oasis. But finally, there's a point at which you get to it, and it's not what it appears to be. And this is the story of life. Life is not what it appears to be. And what we have in life is polarity, duality. We have truth, and then we have not what it appears to be. We have delusion. We have misinformation, misunderstanding. And Yoganandaji described truth is that which corresponds to reality, not subject to opinions. It's not anybody's opinion. Truth is that which exactly corresponds to reality, that which is real. Delusion is that which is unreal. It doesn't mean that it isn't there, it means that it isn't what it appears to be. Now, the world that we live in is described as basically delusion. The creation is delusion. It's a beautiful painting, it's a beautiful story, but it doesn't correspond to that which is real underneath the surface of what it appears to be. We appear to be in bodies, and that the physicality of that reality it appears to be the whole reality. So scientists will tell you that the only reality is that which is solid. But science itself has proven that there are things that you can't see with the senses that are true underneath the surface. So scientists originally thought that everything was solid, only later discovered that it's not at all solid, that it's mostly space. And so when people talk about scientific truth, they're talking about the current scientific understanding of the times in which they live. They're not talking about reality, because they're discovering more and more. And quite often, this accepted theory of science is proven to be only a small part of a much larger picture. And then you find out that, well, this is true, except when that is true. Or when you mix these two truths, then this becomes, other things happen. So, in the spiritual life, what we're concerned with is experiencing that which is most real and avoiding things that distract us from that. And we use the general terminology of delusions. If it's going to get in the way of my spiritual life, it's a delusion. Okay? And there's the delusion of the world and the creation itself, and then there's the way that those universal concepts manifest through our own lives. So, let me ask you a question now. What does delusion mean to you? When you heard this discussion, okay, we're going to talk about delusions along the path. What are those delusions in your mind? Give me some examples. I'm going to write it down. You're okay. So what's a delusion to you? Yes, but give me something specific. A specific manifestation.
Money.
Money.
Relations.
Relations.
Power.
Power.
Success. Social success.
Oops.
Deriving pleasure from materialistic things, happiness,
Sense.
all worldly things are bad.
Well, yeah, but that's everything. I just put everything. And yes, of course. Any other things that come to mind?
Drugs.
Drugs.
All addictions.
Yeah, any addiction.
The different roles that we play, and we are so attached to these roles. Attachments to
I'm going to put them over here. Self-definitions.
self-definitions.
And it's a little, it's connected to this name and it's part of the same thing. Okay. Anything else?
Sleep.
Sleep? Well, interestingly, sleep goes under intoxication.
Happiness.
Position.
Happiness is a delusion? Or it's a delusion to think you can be happy?
It's happiness in you want something, you get
The temporary, I would put this under this because you're talking about the pleasure of something that you enjoy. Okay.
Positions.
Name and fame.
Past and future.
Living in the past and
people.
So that's relationships.
well, we have relationships here. That's in that category?
Unrealistic hopes.
Unrealistic hopes.
Yes.
Hopes are future.
Futures. Okay.
Unfulfilled desires, though, I think.
Fears.
Yes, that's a good one.
Emotions.
What about body itself? That's also really
Death,
Vanity.
Body.
Vanity.
Physical body.
vanity, we have
Self-definition.
Happy.
And this and that.
Fear is
fear.
Fear, anger, all these emotions.
All emotions?
Ego.
No.
Ego.
Yeah. Self-definition.
Well,
Self-definition.
that's okay.
You can also say complexes of superiority and inferiority.
Complexes.
Habits.
Habits.
Complexes, all of them.
Yeah.
Any of
Especially
them.
it's the superiority and inferiority because most of the people they just either they look upward, they look downward, and they look at the people. So those two are really special, I think.
Being proud, like even the spiritual path, arrogance, proud, right?
Habits.
Habits.
Habits?
Yeah.
What if it's a good habit? We have addictions here, intoxication, addiction. What we see here is that the Kauravas, there's a whole bunch of them, but the Pandavas are few. Because getting out of delusion is a relatively simple process. But the ways that we can be in delusion, they just keep going out. They keep going out. The different ways that we can express our confusion, our immersion in ignorance. Ignorance of that which is true. So, there are considered to be three the main all-encompassing categories of delusion, the things that tie us here. Of course, it all comes under ego.
Yes.
The ego and all of its self-definitions, all the various, and these are all self-definitions, ways that we describe who we are, how we feel, how we react to life, the way that we're interacting right now with the creation as we perceive it. These are all, we have our own individual expression and mixture of these, the ways that we relate to these common issues. The number is, it's not like, well actually, I was going to say the numbers don't matter, but number one is in here. Sexuality is one of the greatest delusions, and it's connected to the sense pleasures.
Expectations.
Expectations. We have past, future, and desires and such. But number two, so this is number one. And number two is name, fame, power. Money is who, generally we describe it as, money. Money, because money gives you access to power over others and the creation of other things. And number three is intoxication. Drugs, intoxication, sensuality is a part of that. So anything that immerses us in sufficiently so that we don't have to think about truth. It's the distraction. And the number, there's a certain quality that all of these delusions have. Another D word. Everybody would tell you, the magicians will tell you, that the secret to magic is distracting the audience away from what's really going on. The biggest part of the trick is keeping you busy over here while something else is going on. So if they're putting something in their pocket or they're taking it out here, they're going, woo! You see? So the coin, I should have gotten a coin. Look, the magic trick is, look what I pulled out of his ear. It's a coin. How did it get there? It got there because I distracted you. All of these things underneath, experienced through the ego, are things that distract us from that which is reality. And reality is the simple truth of God's presence, God's reality. You know, that is the real thing. And the whole creation is God's magic trick. And we are so caught up into it. And these are some of the ways in which we're caught. Sexuality, sensuality, we come into this world believing that the only way to experience life is through the senses. And we come into a certain genetic circumstance, a certain environmental circumstance, and all of those experiences, Master said, environment is stronger than willpower. We become imprinted by that environment. But we have a certain genetic background. We also have, which is invisible to most modern science, is a karmic background. We have things that we have been collecting in all of these areas for really countless incarnations. You think, well, my current level of interest in, let's say, money. Let's say money's not a big deal to you. But I can assure you it wasn't somewhere in the past. Somewhere in your past, if you could go far enough back, you would have sought money to, for happiness. And eventually got money, found out that it didn't give you happiness, and then eventually moved on. And all of these things we go through, and we seek to find happiness, which is reality, through all of these things. But it's like the sand. It goes away. You never can find lasting satisfaction. So, interestingly enough, Master said that sexuality can be your greatest friend when you practice control and you take the energy of that and redirect it up the spine to the spiritual eye. So there's a great power. The delusion is powerful. These are very powerful. Ramakrishna, it was said that he could not touch money. And somebody tried to test him. They stuck some coins under the sheet of his bed. And no! So, but power and money cause us to, well, we know about sexuality and sensuality. We talk about the yamas and the niyamas. We talk about non-sensuality. And oftentimes mostly when people talk about that, they talk about sexuality. But it's the whole sensuality. It's living through and for the senses with the belief that will stimulate you into a state of happiness. And that is a basic delusion. So we don't stimulate ourselves into happiness, we calm ourselves into happiness. You could say we stimulate our interest and our connection to the spiritual life, but the very influence of that stimulation is towards calmness, not towards agitation. Sensuality is agitation. Spirituality is calmness. And they're going in opposite directions. So if we want to conquer sensuality, we have to conquer the desire to live through the senses. The way that we do that is by increasing, remember, environment stronger than will. So if you live in a sensual environment, it's much more difficult than if you live in an environment that promotes stillness and calmness. So, and what's interesting is that Master said that we should enjoy life. Desire to live for 100 years, but desire to live that 100 years in harmony with God's creation, with God's will for your life. So it's not wrong to, the Master enjoyed life. He traveled, he enjoyed food, he enjoyed companionship. He didn't need those for happiness, but the personality that he lived through didn't control him. He controlled it. And that's the key, is we have to be the boss. As we grow as yogis, you don't become we say, well, I want to be like Master. Well, you want to be like Master in your ability to control yourself and to commune with God, but you're never going to be the personality of Yogananda. You're going to be the personality that God is living through you. So when I think about self-improvement, I want to be the best expression of spirit that can come through this expression. I can't expect, and we grow up with these expectations. I want to be like Buddha. Oh my God. He did incredible austerities. And so if you can't go, or like Jesus, if you can't go 40 days and 40 nights without food or water, give it up? No. If you're living in a city and you've got a family and responsibilities, you're supposed to just say, well, maybe in the next life I'll do it enough, whatever I can, to hope that something better happens in my next lifetime. That is delusion. That is delusion. The process that each and every one of us is going through is the growing awareness of reality. What is that reality? Happiness. In its forms that we talk about, the attributes of God. This well-being. We don't need to go anywhere or do anything, except that we need to be more aware of and connected to that which is already here. Like I was talking about earlier today. We don't have to find God, we have to realize that God is already present. So reality is present. So we talk about delusions on the path. We're talking about everything that distracts us from perceiving reality. So then we can, we talk about these categories. We'll go to the third one, intoxications. Both sleep, Master called sleep fake samadhi. This idea of releasing yourself from sense consciousness and going into another reality, but it's a subconscious, smaller reality, not omnipresent, infinite reality. And all of the things associated with intoxication are recreational drugs, alcohol, and any form of I'll tell you, one of the, of course, on modern Earth, drugs and alcohol are considered to be the greatest intoxications. But I'll tell you another one that is in pretty close to in that same league: television. Television is an incredible intoxication. If you really think about this. Have you ever noticed, and if you haven't, then do it the next time you sit in front of a television. What happens to your consciousness when you start watching the TV? You remember during the satsang, we took 2 conscious breaths. 2 conscious breaths, you feel like this. When you plug your eyes into the television, you do this. You zone out. It's like it's like a baby sucking on the bottle. Seriously, that's what it is.
Yes.
And you in America, well, this is a play on words, but it's called the boob tube. Not boob meaning mom, but boob meaning a adult person. It's like, and you feel them, just like that. That's what happens. Try it, so you'll see. And this is there are people, a lot of people, who at the end of the day, all they want is this. a beer, and a television. That's all they need. And they would describe, you see these commercials, beer commercials, and it doesn't matter where they are. They take a swig and they go, it doesn't get any better than this. Yes?
Yes.
And this is not reality. This is delusion. That the best that the universe has to offer is a nice soft couch, a meaningless activity on the screen, and a can of beer. That's sad, but that is the power of delusion. So these three main areas can be, you can connect most of these other things to it.
A form of TV is also computers these days that people are,
Yes,
constantly.
of course.
Because TV is there, but basically computers are the TV right now.
Social media is a big.
And
But having said that, and been reminded of this, that all of these things can be used for greater awareness of reality. We watch DVDs of Master, of Swami. They are uplifting. When I watch videos of Swami, it's just like he's there, I'm there. It's fabulous. And now, Swamiji used to really like to eat. He really enjoyed eating. And he brought this up to Master. He says, Master, I really enjoy eating. Swamiji had Raja tastes. He was a Raja eater. He was very discriminating. Master said, he just looked at him and he just smiled. He said, when ecstasy comes, everything else goes. So the classic image of the yogi is almost like a warrior with armor and a sword, and you've got to fight all this stuff off. You've got to look at all of the areas of your life that you consider to be distracting, and you've got to beat them down. And there's certainly a time and a place for that. But generally speaking, that is not the way to win the battle. It's interesting that remember when Krishna was on the battlefield with Arjuna, and he had promised not to fight. But he got upset about what was going on, and he got so upset that he jumped off and he grabbed his discus and he's just about to kill the enemy, and Arjuna says, "No, don't do it, Lord." And later in the battle, in order to get rid of Bhishma, they said, Ashwatthama is dead. But it was the elephant, not his son. But because he thought it was his son, he gave up. His spirit was diminished. We have to get sneaky if we want to conquer delusion. We aren't just going to do it by standing up against it. We have got to get sneaky. And there's a couple of things that we can do that will make all the difference if we want to be successful. The first is fight the things that are so distracting that you can't do some of the good stuff. The most powerful way to change is, remember, environment stronger than will. Get yourself in the positive spiritual environment. And we do that through the Sangha and the books and each other and everything that we do. When we're in it, we are immersed, at least, even if we're restless, we're here. If you're here, you're less connected out there. The more you're connected in here, not only with the Sangha, but most importantly, interior, through meditation. The more we feel the good, the more we do the good, the more we live the spiritual life as we believe we should, the more connection we make to the positive flow of energy in our consciousness. And what did Master say about removing the darkness from a room? The darkness can be in a room for 1,000 years, but just in a moment, when you turn the light on, it's gone. We are turning the light on of our connection to reality. And all of the ways that we do that is the secret mantra, counterbalance, protection from all of the delusions, not just little, each individual one, but you create this force field, your aura becomes stronger, and you become less affected by all that stuff. One of the delusions that many people use to support non-spiritual action is to say, well, when the world gets better, then we have to fix the world first, then we can be happy. That's a delusion. The world isn't going to get fixed. Even in the golden age, there are negative energies that are on the planet. Yes, spirituality is predominant, but that doesn't mean that there's no negative energies. When Rama lived in the golden age, Ravana also lived. So there is darkness even in those times. So this participation in any activity that connects us to, in a better way, to reality, our calm inner connection to love, joy, peace inside, actions that are dharmic for our lives. This is what dispels our connection to delusion. Now, sometimes we have something that is so dominating that we can't do those things. A person who is addicted to drugs has a very, very difficult time meditating, has a very difficult time associating with higher-minded people because they're not vibrationally compatible. And drunkenness. How long is a drunk person going to last coming to satsang? Not very long. Of their own accord, they'll feel uncomfortable. So there are times when we need to face something that is specific to your current situation. And this is where self-honesty and swadhyaya, self-study, come in. And sometimes the observations of like a spiritual coach, someone who can observe something in you that you're too close to it, you can't quite see it. This can be very helpful. But Master said that one of the greatest graces in life is willingness to meditate. Willingness to meditate. This is one of the great challenges that yogis have is well, I'm too busy. What they're really saying is, I'm too restless. Because if you meditated and you really felt peace, you'd want to go back. But you have to get out of that cycle of restless consciousness. And the greatest way to do that is the Sangha. Remember, the gifts in life are, the greatest gift is the Guru. But usually they say it's a physical incarnation is the gift, because a body and an opportunity in this realm is the most motivating for spiritual growth. And then the Guru. The Guru is the ultimate spiritual coach, because they not only have the understanding, but they have the power to magnetically change us. But we have to provide the willingness, the interest. Master talked about, I can't remember the exact words, I was trying to find them, but basically it was, you have to be spiritually interested and enthusiastic. We have to enthusiastically seek our inner attunement. And when we seek that, when we seek God, when we seek a deeper experience, this creates a very powerful directional energy flow. And that directional energy flow increases the divine response. Now, interestingly enough, it will also increase the power of Maya. And you'll find that all of the great saints are tested. But what you also find is that they have the power to overcome those tests through the energy and connection that they have with God and gurus. And many great souls have achieved heights and fallen because they got distracted. All of these delusions, they have one purpose: to distract us, to keep us involved in the creation, to keep us from remembering that it's simple to know God. And they try to make it more difficult. Well, what if this? What if that? Or all of the various ways which we experience life's distracting energies. You drive down the road, it's distracting. It just doesn't need to be. Can't you chant while you drive? You talk while you drive. You think about the future and the past while you drive. You wonder about your relationships while you drive. Why can't we think about God while we drive? Krinaji said that he, for years, when he was in the early years of Ananda, he was traveling to a different city every night to teach classes. And he said he would just practice Hong Sa in the car. Now that's what we call relaxed Hong Sa practice. Regular practice of Hong Sa in your meditation seat. But relaxed practice you can do anytime, anywhere. And this constant, enthusiastic attention. Do you remember your first crush? When you're young and you see someone that you're attracted to, and you have become intoxicated with the thought of this person. We need to be intoxicated at that level of interest with knowing reality. And if you were interested in any hobby that you like, I'll just take ballet. Okay, so ballet, if you're interested in ballet, you go to a ballet class. You go spend time with other people doing ballet. You take some lessons. You watch ballet movies. You put ballet pictures on your wall. Everything ballet. T-shirt, I love ballet. Everything. And if you met a person who was doing that, your thought would be, wow, I'm really into ballet. But you wouldn't think anything. You might think, never interested in me. You wouldn't really be against them. But now if they say, I love my guru, I love God, suddenly everybody's like, how dare you impose your spiritual views on me? And that's why, like in America, church and state are supposed to be separate. What a delusion. They hypnotize themselves. There's in God we trust, right on the money.
Yes.
And the spiritual eye. What? And they have the congressional prayer breakfast. And yet there's no church and state. But people, so we have all taken on these self-definitions that are acceptable to us. And our self-definitions, in our opinions, are better than other people's self-definitions. Now, if we've got a little bit of spiritual transformation, we aren't so offended by other people's. See, as yogis, we realize that they're doing just what we're doing. So it doesn't offend us. We realize that everybody on the planet is just trying to do the same one thing, to be happy. And they're in various stages of realizing that happiness and reality are one thing. Whether you call it God or nature or even atheism, it's the universal potential for well-being and understanding and power. Everything comes from that one universal source. So our self-definition is telling us that I ain't got it. I don't have that reality. But that reality is present. And so why don't we experience it? Because we're distracted. And those distractions have created these grooves, these habits. And we call them samskars, both from this lifetime and previous lifetimes. So all of these things in the various, like the seasons, in the spring, the seeds sprout and the new things are grown. We each in our lives have different seasons. Some plants grow well in the summer, some in the fall, some in the winter. We have samskars that sprout at different seasons in our lives and in our incarnations. But the end result is that they all lead to distraction. Powerful force for understanding and releasing from all delusions is the practice of Kriya. Kriya is the the action that we take that is most globally transformative in terms of working with past karma and strengthening our current connection to spirit. But there is an all-essential component to this. If we want to experience the greatest transformation, remember what Yoganandaji said, that self-realization is 25% the effort of the disciple, 25% the effort of the guru on the disciple's behalf, and 50% the grace of God. That means that 75% is there waiting for us. How do we access that 70? It takes us 100% to get our 25%, and it all comes under attunement. The things that we do in order to put ourselves in harmony with the magnetic influence, the blessings that God wants to give us, that we have to open ourselves up to. And the more we live in attunement, the less likely these particular aspects of individualized distractions will affect us. The number one, remember, environment is stronger than will. If you maintain an attunement with the Guru, who is God's representative, then you will be magnetizing yourself on a global level to get through any of the particular ways in which distraction affects your life. The ways in which you feel less able to focus on God's presence. So when we evaluate our lives and look at the ways that distraction is manifesting through my life, then yes, we can take physical steps, we can take mental steps, we can take emotional steps, and spiritual steps in order to minimize the damage, to maximize the chances of not being bothered in the future. But the greatest things, the way to manifest that is by the very simple ways in which Master has given us to live our spiritual lives. We've seen, and I've personally experienced over the years, because for the first 5 years that I was at Ananda, I was super involved in the inner circle of Ananda, in Swami's world. And then I was sent out to Sacramento with Haridas to start a center. We were no longer living in Swami's little aura. We had to begin to learn how to experience the bigger aura. And it was, night and day the way it felt to be in Sacramento, and which was only, a 2-hour drive. A 2-hour drive from where we lived. It seemed like a whole continent when we first moved there. But gradually we began to stay in tune. But one of the things we did was we went regularly back to the village, and as often as possible to see Swamiji. A master said something very interesting about Oliver Black, who was his second most elevated of the men disciples. And he said that Rajarsi, who was the highest, was, well, he was just in samadhi most of the time. He was really just flying away. And but Master said of Oliver Black, who lived in Detroit, Michigan, which was more in the middle of the U.S., said, well, he's bogging down and he doesn't know why. Even he's that elevated and he doesn't know why he's bogging down. He says, because he doesn't come to the ashram. He stays over there. Rajarsi, if he had to go away, he came back as quickly as he could. But Oliver would stay over there by himself and not come and get in that group magnetism. And I've observed this because I've lived away from the village many years during my life, but I often go back. And I know when you go back to the village, you just have to be there. And somehow this magical aura of connection is improved. And if you go to Spiritual Renewal Week, we've seen this for over 40 years. It really doesn't matter what condition you are when you arrive. And it almost doesn't matter what you do while you're there. Just being there, you're going to feel better when the week is done. If you actually actively deepen the process and cooperate with it, then really sky is the limit on the transformation. We've seen so many people come through Spiritual Renewal Week, and when they leave, they don't want to leave, number one. But number two is that they're floating. They're just, oh man. Now that is a real vacation. You know, most people take a vacation. By the time you get back from, like I did from my last vacation, I had bruised ribs and a disjointed shoulder, and I was, exhausted, and it was a different kind of vacation. It wasn't like seclusion. It wasn't like Spiritual Renewal Week. But in delusion, you think that experiencing sense pleasures and being intoxicated and maybe even thinking thoughts about the past, the good old days, and oh yes, the good old days. And it's funny, I really don't think about old and on very often. Often when I'm sharing with people, because I think it's interesting that history and many of the examples of my training come from that era, but I think about today. I think about right here, right now. We talked about what with Swamiji, what Ananda would be in the future, but it was, it was like being open to an inspiration rather than trying to form it into your desire of what it should look like. It was openness rather than desire, specific, this is what we want. And in terms of the past, we really never have sat around all that much reminiscing. I mean, we do occasionally, but again, most of the time it's to share with others, so that they can get a feel for the history and the lessons that were there. But we just don't live that way. I can hardly remember my kids growing up. I was there. I remember it if I think about it, but been there, done that. What are we doing today? Because God is more real to me today than God was last year, the year before, the year before. If that's happening, then you're shifting the balance. And this is what we need to do. Rather than think we're going to win it today, we need to shift the balance we start with most of our energy going into distraction. And then we gradually, some of our energy is going into reality attunement. And we have to shift that from the 5 minutes of meditation to more, from the 1 hour of satsang to more, to ultimately to community, to living and growing the community, growing past thinking that Ananda is a physical place. But you start with something strong enough to affect you. You feel it, and then the stronger you become, the longer the leash you can have to do things. But I really I believe that that it's true that we can't see as easily our delusions as a wise person can. As we grow, we will perceive ourselves more honestly. We'll be able to. But certainly in the beginning, for most people, yes, there is some stuff you can see which is quite obvious, but more subtle things. I encourage people to seek an elder disciple that you feel in tune with, and develop a relationship with that person. So, like a family doctor. When a family doctor has seen you over a period of 5 or 10 or 20 years, they just take one look at you and they know whether you look good or not. They develop an attunement to you, where if you go to a new doctor, they're starting with, just figures, facts and the list of things to check and such. And in the spiritual life, this is important. Now, masters, the energy of the masters is the first place to seek the relationship, and that's under attunement. And you can spend time with Babaji or Shukteshwar or any of the masters, but generally you'll have one that speaks to you most of the greatest connection, and focus on that. Focus on that relation and actively invite the master to come in and guide you and bless you. And then pay attention to the way that life responds to you, so that you get the messages, the spiritual opportunities to go in the direction that's most beneficial. I've met so many people who read the autobiography of a yogi and put it down for 20 years, didn't do anything. And you could say, well, they weren't ready for it. That's what they say. But trust me, if the master comes into your home, you're ready. But they got distracted. And this can happen anytime, anywhere. Until you're rooted in nirvikalpa samadhi, you are at risk for distraction. And the number one is the environment. Environment's trying to keep the environment of your path, the Sangha, and the books of our path, the music of our path, the people of our path. This spiritual community is such a blessing. So these are, now, does everybody live that way? No, I lived in Las Vegas, out there on my own, for some years. But I had been on the path for many years, and I felt that I was doing what God wanted me to do. That might seem crazy, and I might have been crazy. A lot of times people say, well, I feel that God wants me to do this. And anybody who's got any experience on the spiritual life is going, big mistake, big mistake. Because we get caught up in our delusions, we can't see the other side of it. That's why we need feedback. We need spiritual friends. We need someone strong enough to come up to us and say, at least let them try. I had an experience where I decided that I wanted to open up a music store. I was tuning and repairing pianos, and I loved instruments. I needed to make more money. And, but in the 70s, we'd always ask Swami if we were making a big life decision. But it was, not convenient to see him all the time. So I asked about having an appointment, but it was sometime, and I had enthusiasm, and I was so positive about this idea that Swami's going to say yes, no problem. So I went on, I rented a shop. I had a sign made. I got the telephone installed, and it was everything but instruments. It was just about ready to go, and I had my appointment with Swami. And I said, "Oh, well, hi. I want to open up. I had to be careful about how I said it. I want to open a music store, and I want your guidance. And I've rented a place, and I'm this. Well, Vijay, I'm confused. You're already doing it. What are you asking me? Well, I want your blessing. And he said, well, I'll bless you. Sure, bless you. I said, but what about the music store? So, Vijay, I just don't think it's a good idea. So I was like, so I was shocked, and I didn't, I had to, so I went to a friend of mine at Ananda, and I told him what had happened. And he said, Vijay, the same thing happened to me. And I said, well, I've got this going, I can't not do it. And he said the magic words. And the magic words, he says, really? You really can't not do it? He says, I was convinced that I still had to do it. I'd spent money. I have to do it. He said, it was just those, really, you really have to do it? And I had to ask him, do I really have to? No, I don't. I don't have to. And I didn't. I bailed. And I'd say it was maybe 10 years later, I asked Swamiji, why did you say it wasn't a good idea? He says, well, I was afraid you'd be too successful. He was afraid that I would be too successful in distraction. It's interesting. So about 10 years later, I did open a music store. And I didn't ask him. But I always remembered him saying, don't get distracted. And I had it for about 3 years. I had that karma. I had that interest. And I did it. But I could have gotten majorly distracted. And I consider that I escaped potential. And you look back at your life and you say, okay, any business that you've been in for 40 years or more, you have a life experience. You've seen a lot of water under the bridge. And so you're going, now you can look back and say, well, what are the things that distracted me the most? What are the things that kept me from accomplishing as much as I could have accomplished? Because in the end, you always come to, as Sister Ganamata said, you're going to say, what would you do different? When she was asked, what would you do different in your life? She said, nothing, just more and better. More and better. So, more of the good things and better. More, because the more of the good things that we do, it doesn't, I did the store, I got out over it. I didn't get swept away. I might have been, but I didn't. But, whatever your karma is, whatever you can't not do, apparently I could not do it. But at least I was better prepared. Now, I'm personally convinced that if Swamiji had just looked, Vijay, you can do the story, but just be really careful. Don't get, but you can't get a straight answer from these saints. They always want to leave a little mystery. Because in the end, we have to figure it out for ourselves. We have to experience it. But when I had that music store, I always had one foot out the door. I was ready to go at any time. And I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I made some money. And I learned some things. But I didn't stay longer than I needed to. I got to when it was time to move on, I moved on. And but again, I took a chance. I definitely took a chance. But I think that what our goal is with our children is that they should begin to stand more and more on their own 2 feet. So, but I have to say, if you are blessed to have somebody who you trust spiritually, take advantage of that. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to do what they say. But it's kind of a reality check. It's a way to see if you're way off base, or if they, because you don't want a friend who says yes to whatever you want. You want somebody who is spiritually experienced and can be truthful with you. And that can really be a great help. But you can't be afraid to act. Because as long as you are connected to attunement, then no matter what mess you get yourself into, you'll get out of it. There's no, you'll just be distracted for a time. You'll just take a little bit longer. So all roads lead to Rome. All paths lead to God. But some of them are more convoluted. They take longer. And each of us has to decide how much in a hurry we are to experience happiness. And the delusion that we're going to experience satisfying happiness through any outward experience. I mean, you can have, I said when my kids were born, and twins, son and a daughter, and I was kind of upset with my wife because she didn't want to breastfeed the kids. And I thought that was really nature and the good stuff's happening. But she wasn't into it. So then I found that I was getting up in the middle of the night to feed twins. And it became one of the most incredible, satisfying experiences of my life. It was just fabulous. And I was so thankful that she didn't want to do it after really being upset that she didn't. But it doesn't last very long. Now my kids are grown and they're, they have their own lives and they really don't need me, which is good. But that's gone. The season is gone. It's kaput. So that one of the most fulfilling, those experiences in life when you go, not like the two. That's not. I mean, in a more soul-satisfying way. Something in me just found goodness in that experience, but it won't last. The only lasting thing is God's presence. That's the only lasting thing. And we don't know how much time we're given in this lifetime. And we can't be guaranteed, no matter how well we do, if we don't make it, we don't know how long it'll take to go through being a baby and growing up and finally getting back on the path. And again, in the end, it doesn't really matter. But once you're really thirsty for God, then it matters to you. And that's the key is, we say, make hay while the sun shines. The sun is shining. We have been given the teachings and the environment in which to grow our awareness of reality. We want to take as much advantage of that as we can. Okay, so we have a few more minutes. Any questions or subjects that we haven't talked about? We could do something more specific if you want, but any aspect of this discussion that you want to share or talk about?
There's a line from Mahatma Gandhi he said about that you should not think of leaving a lesser desires until you find a better one, higher desires, higher, I don't get the exact words, but he said that. Meaning that, basically he was saying that how to transfer your energy basically from the lower ones to the higher ones.
Well, I think that's connected to this idea of Swamiji's interest in food. It's that if it's not really getting in the way, don't make a big deal out of it. If you're really doing good sadhana, then don't sweat the little stuff. So you still like the soda. So a lot of people that are not drink coffee. We go to movies. We go on vacation. But the power of the light that's shining, that stuff is not a big deal. So when in the beginning you've got almost to isolate yourself because the power of the past is so strong. But once you've established your spiritual life sufficiently, then you can take a little more chance. But don't be bothered, don't sweat the small stuff. You don't have to be perfect on the outside. You have to perfectly connect on the inside. Then, because you see, many saints have quirks. They're not all balanced. But in their identification is not with the ego. So those outward things that appear to be out of balance they don't control their consciousness. Where when we're out of balance, we are controlled. Our consciousness is affected. But I mean, if you're a saint who can drink poison, it doesn't matter what you eat. Nothing's going to bother you. But until you get to that state, don't be drinking the poison. It'll slow you down. Another thing Master said, which I think is a basic guideline, which is the senses ever fed are never satisfied. The senses never fed are ever satisfied. So the less we indulge in sensuality, your consciousness is at peace on the subject. Where the more you indulge in it, the more you seek that indulgence. And that indulgence can be clothing, fashion. I have a good friend, she is crazy about fashion. And she has so much spiritual potential. But she's just totally distracted by it. And I'm going, you hope that people won't. But we have these things, it's nothing bad about fashion. It's just not as important. So do fashion, but grow this and make it bigger and bigger until eventually fashion, if you need to, it'll drop away. I left the music store. I didn't never have to go back. I used to play the guitar all the time. I didn't play maybe I played once a year for 10 years. For 10 years, I just never played. Now I play the guitar. I enjoy it, but it holds no power over me. And that's it. As you grow, you're less affected by things. But the most important sign is attunement. The most you feel happier. As long as your soul happiness, not I'm happy I got a new car happiness, soul happiness. I did get a new used car. That's coming today. I'm serious. But I feel absolutely no elation about it. I should feel more. It wouldn't be wrong to feel more. I don't even know why I don't feel more. I've owned many cars in the past, okay? They come, they go. I used to be attached to my guitar. In America, I have a really nice guitar. Top quality guitar. I love that guitar. But now I have it in a trailer at an Honda. I don't see it, I don't play it. Could get damaged, I don't care. I have it well packed. I respect it, but I'm not attached to it. I'll give it to my son when I die. I'll save it for him. He was upset with me because when I was 16, I had a classic American race car, a muscle car. This thing was like a teenager's dream, except I would drive it way too fast. And one day, I almost crashed. And I realized that if I kept the car, I might kill myself. So I told him, I said, Kai, I'm sorry I had to sell, because when he heard it that I had this car, he said, Dad, why didn't you save that for me? I would have loved to have that car. I said, man, if I hadn't gotten rid of that car, you wouldn't be here. So you just have to, just let stuff go. And there's freedom in it. I have 5 minutes left, since you guys know I have stories. So I had a wife, and she says one day, I'm done. I'm leaving. I'm serious. And she was a devotee. She's Ananda, and she had a life evaluation, and she came, I need to go do something else. So I was, a little surprised, but it was interesting. The day that she said this to me, the next day I went into seclusion. And in seclusion, I gave that to God, and the intensity of that circumstance created a perfect storm in my consciousness to really energetically give it to God. And I did. And I felt such a release, such a blessing from that experience that I said, oh, take more. Seriously, when you really invest in, like what I was talking about earlier, this idea of changing your consciousness at will, that was what I did. But when you do that sufficiently, you activate some of the 75%, and you get a blessing. And stuff happens, you can't imagine it or believe it. And again, I say, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. Because I was a wild, crazy teenager. But when I got in this attunement environment, it completely changed my life. And I'm still a little wild and crazy, but that doesn't get as much in the way of the other good stuff. So it was good news to me that you don't have to be perfect to be blessed. And the more you feel blessed, the more perfect you will become. You become freed from your imperfections, really. It's not that they all go away, or what you think are your imperfections, but that they lose their power over you. So the food had no power over Swamiji. The music store really didn't have power over me. We shouldn't live in fear of the tests that will come. But the best preparation for any challenge that we will face is attunement. Attunement through practice of Kriya, attunement through devotion, attunement through participation, active, enthusiastic participation in the Sangha. I can't tell you how powerful that is. Some of the greatest changes that I've experienced came washing dishes in the early years, washing dishes and preparing the food, the banquet for the spiritual New Week Indian banquet. We'd spend days preparing food and just serving side by side, shoulder to shoulder with other people. This is a good meditation. Seriously, I know a lot of people who have, I would say, prospered spiritually, a much greater percentage because of their service than their meditation. And it shouldn't be minimized. I'm not saying you shouldn't maximize your efforts in meditation, but don't see your shortcomings in that department as keeping you from experiencing God's blessings in your life. They won't. They don't have. It doesn't have to. And active participation in any activity that increases attunement. Anything. It can list a little stuff. Having the picture of the master, anywhere that you look regularly. Anything. How easy is it to sit down and listen to Swami's music or one of his lectures? This is satsang. It's powerful. So don't get distracted. Whenever you're concerned about distraction, increase attunement. That is the number one protection, attunement. Final thoughts? I have 10 seconds. These guys are amazing. I've been on top. Well, I was over in this service, but last night I was short. And last time I was here, because I go on. These guys tease me about it. Okay, let's have a moment of silence.